Look at this. We have 2 instances of Pi-hole running. One is on .4, one is on .5, and we are blocking ads outside of our network as long as we are on our VPN. If we take a look here, these are Tailscale IP addresses, 100.81, 100.104, but these are appearing on both clients here. So we can see 100, 114.228.118, and we have that same one here on our .5 server. And it is super, super simple to set up. And I think this will elevate your home lab to the next level. So stay tuned and let's get cracking. I recently purchased this. I was browsing eBay. I was honestly a bit bored looking for the next project and kind of what to do. I came across this thing here, which is called 10Zig Thin Client. And honestly, I've never heard of them. You probably haven't either. This thing here is a 4-core Celeron from 2022, I believe. It's got very basic I/O. If we take a look here, it's got HDMI. Oh, no, it's got display ports, actually. I thought it was HDMI. It's got an Ethernet port for USBs, and on the front as well, it's got a USB here and a USB-C, and on the bottom it has a USB-C because you can buy these weird adapters for this thing. But anyway, enough waffling. Let's get started and let me get this plugged in. So the first thing is we need to choose an operating system, and I'm going to be using Debian 13 Trixie. It's only just come out, and to be honest with you, Pi-hole is very compatible with Debian. You're obviously going to have to create the USB stick, so it goes without saying. So make sure you create the USB stick. So this is what the Debian installer looks like, and we're going to select graphical install, select your region, select your keyboard as well. As I said, pretty much most of it is defaults. So now it's asking you for the device name. Now it's called Debian, but here I would call it something more descriptive like DHCP DNS, just to make it easy to recognize on your network. The domain name part we can leave as is. We're not really worried about that. Now here it's asking us for the root password. Make sure that is super secure because you do not want an insecure password. Now we can create another user. So obviously you can create a separate user and then make sure you set a super secure password for that user as well. So where it says partition disks, I usually just select use entire disk. Again, I just use all files in one partition. I don't really need to worry too much about any of this for now. And then finish partitioning and write changes to disk. Write changes to disk. Yes, it's going to create the correct partitions for us to make sure that we get up and running correctly. And it's going ahead and installing the new system for us. So I'm going to get back to you once that's done. Now asking for the package manager, I'm just going to select the closest mirror to me, which is United Kingdom. Now we don't need to configure a HTTP proxy. Now here I have unticked the GNOME and the Debian desktop environment because I do not need them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to SSH server and make sure that's ticked because we're going to SSH into it because it's just going to be a little bit easier rather than having to reconnect to this device. Standard system utilities is fine, and then I'm going to click continue. And the installation is complete. We can go down to continue and reboot the device, and then we're going to be presented with a fresh installation of Debian. Now here, the first thing we need to check is our IP address, and in this case, we are on .178. Now we're going to be reserving this IP address on our router because we need to make sure that this stays permanent. But we're not going to worry about that just yet. We need to set up a couple of things. So the first thing is we need to enable SSH on our server because we're going to be SSHing into this because it's just going to be a lot easier doing what we're going to be doing. So we're going to type in nano/etsy/ssh/SSHD config. And here, where it says permit root login, you want to set this to yes. And then we're going to press Control X, Y, and enter. Like so. Then we're going to clear the screen, and that's pretty much it done. We now should be able to SSH into our server because, as I said, it's just going to be a lot easier for copying and pasting commands in. The final thing we need to do is we just need to reboot the server here. So the server is now fully configured. It's now time to SSH in, and I'm currently on my Mac and I've opened a terminal. If you're obviously in Windows using PowerShell, it's pretty much going to be the exact same. We want to type in SSH and then a root, which is the username that we need to sign in, and then 10.0.40.178 in my case. Now for you, obviously it's going to be different and it'll depend on the IP address that was set. So I'm going to hit enter. It'll ask me for my password and we have remoted in. Now I've gone ahead and kind of adjusted the terminal up a little bit just because it's a bit more visually appealing, but we can see we are running Debian 13 here. Now to install Pi-hole, it's honestly super simple. So I've switched across to my browser and literally all I've typed in Pi-hole installation, and it is this curl command that we are interested in, curl-ssl and so on. So literally just copied it back on my terminal here. I'm going to paste it in and I hit enter. And that is basically it. Just wait for it to go through. It will give you a blindingly bright screen to install Pi-hole, such as this here. So let's go through this. Now here it says Pi-hole is a server, so it needs a static IP address. We're not going to worry about that just yet. We're going to reserve it shortly. I'm I'm going to click continue. Now here it's going to ask me for my upstream DNS. And essentially this means that when it goes out to the internet, it needs a DNS provider. And in my case, I'm going to be using Quad 9 here, filtered DNSSEC. I'm going to hit enter. Now, this is the kind of the meat and potatoes of Pi-hole. And this is why Pi-hole is so amazing. So it says Pi-hole relies on third-party lists in order to block ads. You can use the suggestion below and add your own after the installation. Select yes to include Stephen Black's unified host list. Stephen Black's list is brilliant. We are going to be adding one later. But for now, I'm going to click yes. Query login, enable it. Yep, absolutely fine. Show everything. Yep, that's fine for me because it's only going to be for home use. So we're just going to let it install. Shouldn't take too long, hopefully. It now says configure your device to use the Pi-hole as the DNS server using 10.0.40.178. Now that's what it is in my case. Obviously for you, it would be different. Now I'm going to be changing this shortly to a .5, but we'll get to that. Now to access the web interface, we need to do 10.0.40.178:80/admin. Now we don't need to do :80 because HTTP port is on standard port 80. It also gives me my web login password, and it's giving me this YPKH1IR and so on. Now I'm going to take a screenshot of this, just kind of for safekeeping, but we are going to shortly change the password to something that's more manageable for us, but also making sure that it is secure. Now, in order to change the password for the Pi-hole login, we're going to type in Pi-hole, set password like so. Now I'm going to set a super secure password, and don't worry, you're not going to be able to see what you're typing. So password has now been set. It's time to head over to the web interface. So I've opened my web browser and I'm going to type in 10.0.40.178. And then you can do port 80, obviously, and then /admin. And this is what your URL should look like. And then again, I hit enter. And here we are on the Pi-hole login screen. And if you've done everything correctly, you should now be able to log in with the password that you have just set, like so. And here we are in the Pi-hole dashboard. So we're now going to go ahead and configure Pi-hole and kind of set the fundamentals up. And I'm going to show you how to add your first block list. So I like to use one called Hagazi block lists. And literally all I do is just Google it. And then it takes me to the very first website, which is the Hagazi DNS block list here. And I like to use the one that's called Multi-Pro here. So if you click into it, then here it's going to say should be used for the links and the format. And we look for the one that says Pi-hole, AdGuard, AdGuard Home, eBlocker, and so on. The rest of it is not really that important. We're going to right click where it says GH, and that's the GitHub link basically. And just to show you what that looks like, it's basically a text file with all the different domains on here. So I right click it, copy the link, then I go back to my Pi-hole, then I click on lists, and at the top, I'm going to paste that in. In the comments here, I like to paste the name of the block list. And if we go back here, we can see it's called the Multi-Pro ++ Maximum Protection. So I've pasted that in. Group assignments, we're not going to worry about that just yet. And then we're going to click add block list. And you can see here, it's added the block list. But if we take a look a little bit further down, we can see that the green one has been updated, but the one underneath, the Hagazi one, has a question mark next to it. And I want to show you something. So at the minute, we have 238,753 kind of URLs that are being blocked. So if we go back to tools, click update gravity, and then click update, it'll go ahead and pull the latest information and add it. If we go back to dashboard, we are now up to 531,000. Now we're pretty much done with Pi-hole and ad blocking, but there is one more change that we need to make so this integrates nicely with Tailscale. So on the left-hand side, we're going to click on settings. We're going to click on DNS. And in the top right-hand corner, you're going to see a toggle that says basic. So if you click it, we are not basic, we're expert. We're going to click on expert. And here is where we need to make a change, which says permit all origins. Now, I appreciate that there's a risk involved in any of this. So just be mindful of what you're doing. If you do not need ad blocking outside of your home network, by all means, do not turn this on. But what we're going to get is if we don't turn this on and we try and use ad blocking on our Tailscale network when we're not on the home network, it will not work. Allow only local requests means it will only use kind of the internal IP addresses. So in my case, it'd be 10.0.40 and so on. Whereas if you enable all origins, you'll be able to use it across the Tailscale network. Now, on upstream DNS, while we're here, we can also add Google as a fallback and also Cloudflare. But that's just me, bit of personal preference. Quad 9 is generally good enough. We don't need to do anything else here, and then we're going to click Save and Apply. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and install Tailscale. And to be honest with you, it is literally just as easy. Tailscale have a complete guide on how to do this, block ads on your devices from anywhere using a Raspberry Pi. We're going to ignore the Raspberry Pi bit, and this is why we're using Debian, because it runs the same software as the Raspberry Pi. So we've installed our Pi-hole, we've done all this. The next thing we need to do is we need to create our Tailscale network. Now, I'm going to show you how to do that, but I'm actually going to be adding this as a fallback DNS server on my personal network. But the process is going to be the exact same. So if I go on tailscale.com, and this is literally how easy it is to set up a VPN and Tailscale in this case. So you're going to click on the first link and then it's going to say login. Now here I'm going to use Apple. It'll ask me for my email. So obviously just sign in. And then this is what you're going to be presented with when you've signed in. So we're going to click on settings here and then under user management. And this is kind of just a quality of life improvement. Where it says user approval, it says manually approve new users. Make sure you tick that box. Then under device management, we're going to do the exact same under device approval. Manually approve new devices. And that just stops from any rogue users or any rogue devices connected. Let's now go ahead and install Tailscale on our server. So now it's time to install Tailscale on our Linux server. So we're just going to copy this command here, which is curl fsSL, https, and so on. And then back where we are SSH'd into the server, we're just going to paste the command. And that is basically it. Give it a few seconds, let it download. There we go. It has installed. And at the bottom, it'll say run Tailscale by typing Tailscale up. We're going to have to make a slight change to this command. So we need to copy this command here and paste it in because it's sudo Tailscale up, but we also need to have this accept DNS equals false flag attached. So we're going to copy this and then paste it in here. So we can now see this link and I'm going to copy this link here. I'm going to go ahead and paste it into my web browser. So I want to use this one here. I'm going to paste it in. It'll ask me again to sign in with Apple. And it will say, do you want to connect this device? You're going to click on connect. And then here, this is why I've configured the security measure. It says logged in, but not connected. So I'm going to click open admin console. And this is what I was saying, where you need to approve each and every device before it joins your Tailscale network. And if we look on machines, we can see DHCP DNS adblock has been added here successfully. So our machine is now on the Tailscale network, but we're still not getting any queries. And this is where you're going to have to change this on your router. So I now need to log into my router. I'm going to type in 10.0.40.1, which is my router IP. So I've now signed in on my router here and I want to reserve the IP address. Now, in order for me to reserve the IP address, I need to go into, on the left-hand side for me, it's network and then LAN. And if I scroll to the bottom, it says address reservation here. And here I need to click add. And then I need to find that device and I can find it by IP address. So in my case, it's 10.0.40.178, but I don't want it to be 178. I want it to be .5. I'm going to call it DHCP DNS adblock. I'm going to click submit. Now in my case, you can see I've already reserved it. So if we take a look here, we can see the IP address has already been reserved. But what I want to do is I want to change that to .5. And I'm going to click submit. So next time my DNS server requests a new IP address, it'll take it to .5 instead of .178 because it just makes it easier for me to manage. So we've pretty much done that. But under DNS settings, we're going to have to change this. And we can see here proxy server address is currently set to .4, which is kind of my main one. But I want to add .5 as well as a secondary DNS server. Now, in GLI admin's console, it's a little bit different where here I can only add one proxy address for my DNS server. But if I click on advanced settings and then go into like a special kind of user interface, I can click on network, DHCP DNS, and then here under DNS forwardings, I can do the same again, 5, and then I can do hashtag 53. So I've now set up two DNS records, basically 10.0.40:53. Well, in this case, I need to put a hashtag and then 10.0.40.5:53. Now the .5 is not going to be live yet. We're going to actually go ahead and reboot that. And that's basically it. Now it's different for every device. Obviously, some devices won't let you, but because I'm running a fairly open piece of software, OpenWRT, I can do that. So I'm going to click save and apply. So it's going to go ahead and actually apply those changes. Now, this is my current DNS server, but I just wanted to show you how that looks. And we can see here, we've got 7 active clients. We've got 81,000 total queries and 22,000 of them were blocked. We can see kind of what time, what's happening, when they were being blocked and all this sort of stuff. We can also see the percentage of queries blocked and also how many domains are on the list. Now, this is kind of my main, this is my .4 address here, but I'm also, as I said, going to be using a .5 one. And it is really cool to be able to click in and see who's using it. And if we take a look here, we can actually see that my Tailscale is also using this DNS. And I know the IP addresses, the 126 here is my dad's one, for example, but he lives in another country and is in a completely separate network, but he's also getting ad blocking here. I think that is super, super cool. So let me show you how to set up this final bit because this is kind of critical. So if we take a look here in where our machines are, the one thing we need to change is we need to change something under our DNS settings here. If we go back to machines, it is this IP address that we need. So I'm going to copy this IP address. I'm going to go back to DNS. And then here where it says global name servers, I'm going to remove this because that's the old one. And I'm going to add a name server, click on custom, and then paste the Pi-hole IP address in here. And I'm going to click save. And then where it says override DNS servers, I'm going to tick that box. And now essentially what we're going to have is we're going to have ad blocking even when we are not on our home network. Now, obviously you're going to have to configure it for your phone. You're going to have to configure it on all the devices on your network where you're going to have to install Tailscale and obviously make sure they connect to the network. But that is basically it. We're now going to be able to see all the ads being blocked across our whole network as I've just shown you. But essentially, this is what you expect to see. So I lied a little bit at the beginning when we said we're going to set up the HCP because I did think about it as I was making the video and I just thought, A, it'll make the video too long, and B, it's just not the most user-friendly. And that's why I kind of want to separate it out into a separate video and show you how to use it on Windows Server 2025. And we're going to cover something different other than Linux. But hopefully you've now learned how to SSH in, how to reserve IP addresses, how to kind of set up Tailscale, and also how to have a really cool and functioning network at home. So let me know what you thought of this video. Please leave your comments down below. Also, obviously, don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know if this is something that you would attempt running, because in my opinion, this is actually pretty straightforward. It's not that difficult to set up. But stay tuned for any future videos. As I said, we've got Windows Server 2025 coming up, and I'm really, really excited about this to show you how to set up Windows Server and how you can set up the HTTP because it's got some super cool options on there.